Patrick Peterson, he's got a new nickname, and we're also going to put a moratorium talking about the former cornerback of the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals still don't have a tight end. We'll talk about that, and we will rank position groups, all that and more. Bo Brack and Alex Clancy. It's Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy, Bo Brack. Follow him at Bob Brack on Twitter. Follow me at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Go to the YouTube channel. Subscribe. We're almost at 700 followers in about 3 months. Subscribers, which is bonkers. This is going pretty quickly, and Bo and I are just happy that you're along for the ride with us. We've got an interesting show today, kind of organically through yesterday's podcast, the premiere on YouTube. Patrick Peterson has a new nickname, and we're going to talk about that, and then we are not going to talk about the former Arizona Cardinal cornerback until the beginning of week 2 when the Minnesota Vikings come into town. There's been some tight end movement, and the Arizona Cardinals are not a part of it. We'll talk about that in the second segment. We're going to rank position groups. We've talked about this a little bit, a lot of times, many times throughout the offseason. We're going to kind of put a stamp on where the Cardinals are, about a week and a few days away from the start of the 2021 NFL season. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Run Your Pool. Check them out today and get $10 off at runyourpool.com/locked on, or use our promo code locked on at checkout. Bo, Patrick Peterson, P2, has had some not so nice things to say about the Arizona Cardinals organization since he's left and signed an overpriced $10 million one-year deal with the Minnesota Vikings, whether it be via his podcast with Brian McFadden or him just spouting his mouth in other ways. Yesterday we saw, or 2 days ago, we saw an Instagram post regarding Malcolm Butler after Malcolm Butler decided to retire. There's a new nickname abound for Patrick Peterson. I'm intrigued.
Sure. Well, I mean, if you go through the timeline, right? The most recent timeline, since he's exited the organization, he said that he was tolerated the last couple seasons. He was tolerated. We tolerated Patrick Peterson. We didn't embrace him at all. And then he went in on Steve Keim on his podcast and took his shots at the general manager, who's a very easy target. You and I both know that from our own things that we've said about Steve Keim. But then you had Patrick Peterson butcher the English language and have absolutely brutal grammar when he said that his jersey will not be worn, apparently by Malcolm Butler, just moments after he was placed on the reserved retired list. And yesterday, as the YouTube episode was premiering, of course, the Locked On Cardinals is on YouTube. Please subscribe, check it out. We're premiering at noon, and I was in there in the chat, and I forgive me for not remembering who said it, but they said Petty Patrick, Petty Pat, and I was like, well, that's easy. P3, Petty Patrick. He's no longer P2. It's no longer P2 any longer. It's P3 when we refer to Patrick Peterson here on the Locked On Cardinals podcast.
This is an alliteration positive podcast.
It is. It absolutely is. So P3 coming to week 2. That's the next time we're going to say his name, unless he goes completely overboard, unless he's, going full ex-girlfriend mode and lighting your clothes on fire on your front lawn mode, then we'll talk about Patrick Peterson. But I think it should be pretty subdued the next couple of weeks because both teams have season openers. We'll be previewing those next week. And then, of course, there it is, week 2. Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings, along with P3, coming to State Farm Stadium, take on the Arizona Cardinals.
I mean, I do want to give a little bit of an Oscar speech here, an acceptance speech for Patrick Peterson from me. Thank you for all the content.
Yes.
Thank you for saying dumb things that are pretty unfounded. Let's just go back. And before we put the official moratorium, 2018 requested a trade. 2018 rescinded trade. I'm here. I'm an Arizona Cardinal. Then I think it was after postgame or after practice in the locker room said, I want to be the next Larry Fitzgerald. Cool. Yep. He then proceeds to get popped for PED. So he cheated, was out for 6 weeks of the 2019 season, left his team out high and dry.
Don't forget the weeks. Don't forget the Waste Management Phoenix Open where
where he said he wanted to be here.
Yeah.
Sorry. And I didn't say the date and time, but I was, glossing over because we talked about it so much. 2019. And then from 2019 through the 2020 season, played like a backup cornerback. So, you know what? Thank you for thinking you were tolerated when in fact you were overpaid the last 2 years that you were here. Oh, and you're also a cheater. So thank you for your time. The interesting part though, Bo, is his new team traded for a tight end recently. And it kind of irks a little bit. They lost Kyle Rudolph in the offseason. I don't even know where he is. It doesn't even matter. Under the Giants. And
they released him.
Yeah. So
he could take a pay cut. Yeah.
What they did is what, teams that don't have a pass catching tight end on their roster do. They trade for one or try to acquire one. And the Arizona Cardinals have yet to do that. We're going to go a little bit meatier towards the back end of this podcast. So we'll break here. Options for the Cardinals. How high of a draft pick would you offer for potential tight ends on other organizations to join the Cardinals? We'll talk about that and a whole lot more on Locked On Cardinals coming up. First, though, new-ish sponsor for us, Run Your Pool. Football season's back. Let's make the most of it with a better way to create your custom pool at runyourpool.com. The premier sports pool hosting service. Run Your Pool makes it ridiculously easy to run a football pool with friends, family, or office mates. They offer dozens of formats, including Survivor, Pick'em, Squares, Margin. Man, I'm getting so excited for football with all these. Confidence pools, 33, and more. Run Your Pool hosts formats for NFL, college football with 1 week games, full seasons, playoffs, or just the Super Bowl. Unlike other fantasy sports platforms, Run Your Pool has options and settings to make it your own. You can even brand your pool for your local business, bar, or restaurant, reconnect with friends, and join nearly 2 million football fans to make every game action-packed this season. So check them out today. Get your $10 off at runyourpool.com/lockedon or use our promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. Anywhere, everywhere in the world, Run Your Pool helps friends and colleagues compete. The NFL season starts September 9th, so start today at runyourpool.com/lockedon and have your pool up and running in minutes. Runyourpool.com/lockedon. Game on. Second segment here, Locked On Cardinals. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us at Locked On AZ Cards on Twitter. Follow him at Bob Brack. Follow me at Clancy's Corner. We're almost there. It's been the offseason feels long and short at the same time. This has been a very eventful offseason for the Cardinals. Let's just hope it works. We don't want to be sitting here week 7 like who's going to be the next head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. That's my biggest fear, at the end of last season, where I think they should have removed Cliff Kingsbury from his post. Bo is on the other side of that. We'll see who ends up being right. I hope I'm wrong. But there's one position that Cliff Kingsbury is going to have to do without when it comes to route running at this point in time, and that's the tight end position. It's kind of an afterthought where we just don't talk about it because it's not going to be in the offensive game plan as of September 2nd at 8:59 a.m. local time.
Well, it hasn't been in the offensive game plan in the history of the Arizona Cardinals for the most part. I mean, it's been the most overlooked position since they moved to the Valley, and they haven't really invested at all. I mean, they had a second-round pick in Troy Nicholas. Remember him? They took him second round at Notre Dame, did nothing, couldn't stay on the field. You had a couple guys flash like Rob Hausler or Ricky Seals-Jones, but nobody really has played at the level necessary to make that a threat in the Arizona Cardinals or Phoenix Cardinals offense. I mean, we remember Freddie Jones, and he might be the greatest tight end in the history of the Arizona Cardinals, the Arizona/Phoenix Cardinals. You take away St. Louis and in Chicago, whatever, but that's pretty sad. So, and this might be, as far as playmaking, this might be the worst group that they've ever put out there. We know Max Williams is a solid blocker, and we know Darrell Daniels can block as well. But man, as far as playmaking, it is sparse out there as far as the your options. I mean, they didn't it was a Demetrius Harris they brought in. And he was a guy that he was also a former basketball player. And I think he played at Milwaukee or something like that. And then he was with like Ross Travis, who was just put on the practice squad, former hoopster, but he's been in the league a while. He's had enough time and he hasn't popped. So that's your biggest threat as far as playmaking at the tight end position right now on the roster, Demetrius Harris.
Yeah. Remember, I think Mr. Daniels had a touchdown catch in Carolina. I want to say he had a random touchdown catch last year. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's not much. So it begs the question. And the reason why this is brought up was because, Irv Smith got hurt and the Vikings traded for Chris Herndon, who used to play with the Jets. And there's a report out that they had inquired about Dallas Goddard because the Eagles have 4 tight ends rostered right now, one of whom is Zach Ertz, who's obviously the elder statesman of the two. Dallas Goddard has always been the favorite red zone threat when Carson Wentz was there, even though Zach Ertz was a terror between the 20s. Like he was like he was the vulture. Dallas Goddard was in fantasy football because Carson Wentz would always look at him in the red zone and definitely around the goal line. So, Bo, let me ask. If, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, Dallas Goddard may be on the table, how high of a draft pick would you offer for Dallas Goddard?
Man, it's tough because when you think back this offseason, we always expected it to be Zach Ertz. If any of those tight ends were going to be moved from Philly, and I think we settled, you were willing to part with the 3rd round pick. I thought you could go later, and that's probably what happened. They didn't think that they were getting anything in return for a guy like Zach Ertz, and they felt like they're probably trading him at his lowest value. So why do it? Just kind of hold out and see what kind of start to the season he has, and maybe they can trade him around the trade deadline, which you said is early November yesterday. I think I'd be willing, and this might be crazy, to part with a 2nd round pick for a guy like Dallas Goddard. Because if you look at his last 2 seasons, I mean, they would compete for the GOAT tight end season for the Arizona Cardinals. He's gone over 500 yards receiving, 600 yards receiving. Those type of numbers we haven't seen from Arizona Cardinals tight end. Dallas Goddard had over 500 yards receiving last year in just 11 games. He's a threat. He's big. He's 6'5". He's athletic. I mean, the biggest knock against Dallas Goddard is there's video out there of him absolutely getting cold cocked and knocked out and put to sleep in a bar in South Dakota. That's it.
I didn't know about. How do you know about that? Are you scanning the dark web, Bo?
Yeah, I have
concerned.
I have these South Dakota police scanners in my house. Make sure I hear all the goings on as far as that's concerned. No, I mean it was a relatively big story. I mean, he got absolutely dropped. I mean, it was one of those things where you get hit on the chin and it was lights out. So I think it was a pretty bad sucker punch. But if that's the worst thing against him, and his inability to really stay healthy, but I think he absolutely can. And if he does, I think he becomes a big threat in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. He's a plug and play guy, and I would say a 2nd round pick too, regardless of where it is. It's just the most overvalued entity in professional sports are NFL draft picks. I mean, it's in the 2nd round. He's 26. He's 6'5". He's a hoss, and if you can take a proven entity, you're gonna have to pay him. But if you can take a proven entity and trade for a 2nd round pick, I mean, I could almost be talked into, if their cornerback room wasn't so porous, be talked into trading a 1st round pick for him to get him, because at least he's kind of a hybrid guy where he's a tight end, but he's pretty much a wide receiver from the tight end position, and then you can plug him in and just play him and not think about it, which is fantastic. If you can give away a high draft pick for that and not have to worry about it, I mean, you got to consider it. It would immediately make this Cardinals offense half of a grade better. Yeah. Maybe they're at a B. They're like an 86% right now. That'll put them in about an 89. I mean, something you got to think about.
What about, just think about as far as 2nd round picks, Buda Baker hit. That was Steve Keim trading up in the 2nd round.
Yep. Byron Murphy.
Then Byron Murphy he's developing. Mm-hmm. Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore, Andy Isabella, Troy Nicholas, I mentioned. But Dallas Goddard was a second round pick himself. He was a project. He was a guy coming out of a small school. And now, he's a proven commodity, something of which that they haven't had at that position for. Like, how many times are you going to just try to make something work with a tight end? He's like, hey, he can make plays. He's like, no, he can't do it consistent enough to where opposing defenses have to game plan for him. It's not there, not even on that level. So they need something. And look, if they overspend, I think you can say, okay, Steve Keim has now turned a pair of 3 second round picks into starting players. Chandler Jones, who's a star. You've also got a star in DeAndre Hopkins, and then you would have a starting caliber tight end. And then the 3rd round pick for Rodney Hudson. I think that's I agree a little bit with what you said as far as the overvaluing picks. If you get it for a proven commodity, I'm all for it.
Well, I mean, look who's drafting. Yeah. I mean, that's with Steve Keim. If Steve Keim's going to be at the helm, I mean, it's something that what you're going to get instead of drafting a question mark. Because regardless of how often people say, oh, this guy's a lock to be a star, you have no idea until they do it. So I'd much rather take, a proven commodity in Dallas Goddard to immediately elevate and give this offensive facelift in a position of desperate need. Speaking of desperate need, Bo and I are going to give you our strongest position group and weakest position group and kind of fill in the dots between the two. All that and more next we wrap up this Thursday edition of Locked on Cardinals. But Bo, BetOnline's getting weird, huh?
They're getting weird, but that's because we're officially 1 week away from the NFL kicking off. Next Thursday, defending champion, reigning champion, whatever you want to call Super Bowl champion, Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Dallas Cowboys. And man, BetOnline has an incredible offer for you right now that if you take advantage of their opening day super promo, you make a bet on Thursday, September 9th between the Bucs and the Cowboys. If you lose, your wager will be refunded up to $25 for new customers only when signing up and using the promo code NFL100. That's not it. They've got an incredible 100% welcome bonus. So when you sign up today at betonline.ag, you will be matched dollar for dollar what you put in to your account.
Damn.
So head over to the website, take advantage of that, as well as you get the updated odds, props, and contests, including the online's biggest $500,000 NFL mega contest, the world's largest $200,000 NFL Survivor contest, open now at BetOnline. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of your great offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.
And I have rockauto.com open right now. No joke. And there's a couple reasons why. rockauto.com, it's raining outside, so right after the podcast, I can get what I need on rockauto.com without having to go to a chain storefront, because the .com after rockauto.com, I don't know if you know this, Bo, that stands for website. Not specifically, but that means it's a website. They've been online for 20 years, family-owned business. You don't get upcharged 30, 40% like chain storefronts might. The prices are reliably low always. So if say you need, tail lamps or carpet or whatever, just go into the search engine or the search bar and just type in what you need, and it'll come up with options. And then you order it, gets delivered, bing, bang, boom, you got stuff for your car. Whether it be for your daily driver or your weekend convertible, rockauto.com has got you covered. Again, if you're not a manufacturer, you won't get upcharged, which is a huge perk that Rock Auto offers. Go to rockauto.com, write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box so they know we sent you? Amazing selection, reliably low prices. All the parts your car will ever need, rockauto.com. All right, final segment. What do we have? 6 shows after this, Bo, before football?
Yeah, unless something goes down over the weekend and we do like a bonus episode. We did about 18 episodes on Tuesday. It was unbelievable.
It was a lot of talking. But it's great. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. Like, thank you to everybody who our numbers are growing, which is great. But Bo and I just want to stay consistent. We want to entertain. We want to inform. We want to give good analysis, good opinion. Thank you to everybody who's along for the ride. At Bob Brack on Twitter, at Clancy's Corner for me, at Locked On AZ Cards. And again, subscribe to the YouTube channel, please. There's some strong position groups for the Arizona Cardinals and some not so strong. Bo, let's do this specifically with the leader in the clubhouse and the bottom dwellers. Who is or what is the strongest position group, in your opinion, that the Arizona Cardinals have rostered right now?
I'm going to maintain what I've been saying all offseason long, the pass rush. It needs to be, especially when you look at the cornerback room. I mean, they have to be disruptive. They have to be nightmare fuel for the opposing offenses, and they have to get quarterbacks off their spots to be inaccurate and not be able to make plays, and also shut down run games. J.J. Watt, Chandler Jones, we haven't seen them this preseason, but there's the expectation that they are going to kind of regain their form as being perennial Pro Bowlers, being the 94 rated overall guys on Madden. If they can be those guys, the Arizona Cardinals defense is going to be a problem for the rest of the NFC West and the rest of their 17-game schedule. So I think that as far as talent-wise going into the season, I think that the pass rush is their strongest unit, because you can also add on top of that, Marcus Golden, who they re-signed this offseason. You bring back Dennis Gardeck. Right now you've got Devon Kennard still on the roster, a guy who had 7.5 sacks back in the day. And then you have, Victor Dumakaji still on the team as a 6th-round pick, who has a pretty impressive motor. If he's just going to be in a rotation and see some spot snaps, I like him in that role.
And I will stick with mine. It's the safety position, because it has to be, especially with the inferior nature of the cornerback room at this point. If Jalen Thompson can stay healthy, this could be a top 3 safety group in the NFL with Budda Baker leading the charge. And we're going to see if Budda Baker is going to play the same kind of role he did last year, or he's ball hawking, or he's at the line of scrimmage at times, or if he's going to play, a more traditional safety role that we haven't really seen from him in the last year or so. And again, this is all going to be predicated upon the cornerback room, the pass rush as well, and the ability for, the Cardinals not to give up chunk pass plays on defense. Now, when it comes to the weakest, I feel like I'm going to give a disclaimer. You know how, in stats on websites and everything, minimum 12 games played, minimum 500 passes. The tight ends are an NA. Can't even say they're the weakest, because, it's not even fair. They haven't met the requirements of being a filled out pass catching, group on this offense. So I'm going to say an NA. My weakest group is the cornerback room. And you could say the running back room, but I feel like you can still win games with an inferior running back. Look at Buffalo. Look at what they did with pretty much no run game last year. So you could do it. You don't want to, but Kyler could throw the ball 45 times a game, and the Cardinals could put up points with his ability to run the ball, separate from the running back room. But let's not. Sure, Byron Murphy's probably taken a big step forward. He has. We've seen it. But is he a cornerback 1? We don't know. Marco Wilson has played legitimately 0 NFL games. Tay Gowan, 0 NFL games. My favorite stat that I put out over the last week is the current cornerback room for the Arizona Cardinals. Pay attention, Bo. Okay. The current cornerback room for the Arizona Cardinals collectively have played 31 NFL games over the last 2 years, and all of them were Byron Murphy. So you tell me how to be excited about that. You tell me how to have any sort of weight, like, it'll be fine. It's gonna work. Yeah. How do you know that?
Look, I agree as far as the concern as far as the cornerback room, but as you said, the tight end room doesn't even register. I mean, it's not even worth talking about. It's just like, okay, that's your weakest group. We're not even gonna incorporate it. We're gonna have our blocking tight ends as Max Williams, Darrell Daniels, and that's what it's gonna be. That's the weakest group to me, because they don't have any prospects, Alex. They don't have anybody that's young and say, hey, in a perfect world, this guy could be a stud. It's a guy they just brought off the street, and Demetrius Harris right around training camp. So tight end is the lowest, but I don't want to talk about the tight end because it's been pretty much turned a blind eye to. So then you got to look at the cornerback and the running backs rooms, because there are guys that have tremendous upside, but isn't it kind of naive to believe that both of them are going to hit? Because that rarely happens. I mean,
Yeah, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, because this is going to be, I'm going to put this out on Twitter. I just thought about this. I can't believe we haven't thought about it before. Who do you believe will take the step forward this year? Byron Murphy or Chase Edmonds?
I think
they're both in a role they've never been in before.
Sure.
Expected to perform as RB1 and CB1 right now, respectively.
Mm-hmm.
Who has a better chance of performing better?
It's out of necessity. It's got to be Byron Murphy. They just need somebody, because you can have, as you mentioned with Buffalo, you can have a very pedestrian running back room and still be an impactful offense. But if you can't cover anybody, you're in deep dog doo. There's no doubt about it.
You're Dallas Goddard at a bar in North Dakota.
Yeah,
is what it is.
Yeah. Yep, you're standing at the bar, and the next thing you know, you're waking up on the floor.
Yeah,
wondering what happened.
Yeah, what happened? It's interesting, because out of necessity, you're right, but I'm gonna stick with my thing. It's got to be the offense. It's got to be Chase, because bad defenses have been overcome before. Bad defenses, or subpar defenses without an elite offense, have no chance. And Chase Edmonds, the reason why, even on top of that, is because of how great he is as a dual threat, catching the ball to the backfield. Once he gets in space, he's one of the more exciting players in the league. He's just not known. Before Budda Baker got paid, I told you, I was getting texts from people saying, "Who's Budda Baker?" Well, it's probably the same about Chase Edmonds, unless you drafted him in your fantasy league. We've seen great things from him in spurts. So if he can take that step forward and touch the ball 20 times a game, whether it be, 15 rushes and 5 catches, or, a mixture of the two, that elevates this offense. Because the only thing for sure, and we've talked about this on this offense, is Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, Rodney Hudson. That's what we know for sure. DJ Humphries is probably in that group now too, and Kelvin Beachum in some capacity. But those are the sure things on this offense. If you can add Chase Edmonds to that, that could be a game changer for this team, especially with the high-powered offenses they're going to play against this year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It is kind of interesting, just those two players, where finishing the 2020 season with okay, Byron Murphy is a solid inside corner, right? And then we know that the ideal role for Chase Edmonds is not an RB1, but it is a guy that should be out there on the field, and he has a playmaking ability. Both have really strong roles in the league, and you're going to make them play this huge role on both sides of the ball. That it's pretty ridiculous that that's where they are right now. As far as, I don't know. If both of them pop, that'd be huge for the Arizona Cardinals. But to think that could go that way for two guys, where we know what their ideal role is in this league, for them to play above and beyond that, it's pretty unrealistic. But who knows? They've got Byron Murphy as a draft prospect. People envision him as a starting
top
caliber.
15. Yeah, they were saying he was top 15. The fact that he dropped was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see. This is how you build a winning franchise. Drafting
a lot
players.
Of things have to go right. Yeah.
Yeah, but they have to evolve and grow into NFL players. And this is the year we're going to find out, probably for both of them, if they're going to get a second contract with this team.
Yeah.
And they're going to get their chance. This is all NFL players, especially a kid from Fordham who balled out in college. And then, he was always looked over. They traded for Kenyon Drake. They didn't give him a chance when David Johnson fell off. And now you got a chance. You have a great backup dancer with James Conner.
He pulled his hamstring. He was going to start against New Orleans. He did start against New Orleans, and he was Dunsky, and they had to get somebody.
Well, those two, now that we talk about it, two of the bigger catalysts this year, if the Cardinals want to raise their floor talent-wise and win some games and stay in games they may be a little bit outmatched in. Alex, Clancy, Bo Brack. Oh, good.
I mean, there's tiers. Like one, Kyler Murray, his success, that's paramount. That's it, right? There's different tiers. It's Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, the stars, J.J. Watt, and Chandler Jones. But then there's this next tier of guys that are very important. You got to have a solid run game. You've got to be able to cover. And those are the guys that you're going to rely upon. It's pretty nuts.
This season will either be amazing or it will be Armageddon. Alex Clancy, Bo Brack, Locked On Cardinals. We'll talk to you tomorrow.